Dear students, welcome to the part 4 of Introduction to Adrienne Rich's Poetry. So far, we have discussed that what a radical feminist poet she was, and with her radicalism, it's not like that she has drawn swords against men, and she gives a new kind of definition of feminism, whereby in the last lecture we spoke about how she proposes, how she wants the chasm or the gap between the men's writing and women's writing and men in general and women in general in society regarding their relationships, how they are perceived. She wants that gap to be filled. Now, in this lecture, we'll focus further on the kinds of topics that she has dealt with. Rich's prose collections are widely acclaimed for their erudite, lucid, and poetic treatment of politics, feminism, history, racism, and many other topics. Now, looking at the range of her topics, you can understand that there are certain things that do not go hand in hand. Generally, when it comes to poetry or arts in general, most of the writers, most of the poets, they attempt to make their poetry apolitical in nature, or they deliberately try not to take a stand. But when it comes to Adrienne Rich, it's entirely different. That she's not only providing a depth to her poems as far as their themes are concerned, but she actively deals with the issues of politics, feminism, history, racism, and you can see that why is it that feminism, history, racism, and politics are there. So when we speak of feminism in general, feminism is about power structures, and history in a way reflects those power structures, how they have run the society, how patriarchy has dominated the entire scene. And when she speaks of racism, you can understand that there is a direct, indirect kind of connection between uh, history, racism, and feminism, because racism is also about disenfranchised people, people who have been marginalized. It talks about apartheid. So she sees a kind of common pattern, and we may say that in a way she speaks for the subaltern or all those people, regardless of gender, all those people who have been discriminated against historically. Uh, in her book on lies, secrets, and silence, Selected Prose 1966 to 1978, which was published in 1979, Rich continues her feminist intellectual project, and it contains one of Rich's most celebrated essays, when, and I quote, "When We Dead Awaken, Writing as Revision," in which Rich clarifies the need for female self-definition. Now, again, we need to go slow at this, that Rich was taking her poetry as a kind of an intellectual project. It was not just a kind of, as generally happens in poetry, that whereby the poets, they emphasize upon uh, what their feelings are, and poetry becomes more kind of emotional in nature. But with Rich, her poetry cannot be separated from the kind of the political agenda she had in mind. And this political agenda is not about winning elections or anything, but she looks at politics from an intellectual standpoint, and she wants feminism to grow. Even the title suggests, look at the title of this book, on lies, secrets, and silence. Now, lies, what kinds of lies? Lies that we have been secretly told, lies that have glossed over the kind of discrimination that has occurred in society through ages, and things that have been kept secret from you may say the mainstream writing or establishmentarian behavior, but there are these dirty secrets which talk about a lot of discrimination and exploitation in the name of, say, morality, religion, or whatever, and the kind of silence that has been imposed upon the disenfranchised people, including women. Now, this particular essay, which is titled "When We Dead Awaken," writing as revision. Now, we need to understand that she is trying to create a new definition, a self-definition of female identity. And why is it that she calls it revision? So it is a revision what you are today, where feminism stands today. You cannot understand it fully without going back into the history. And there are missing links, and you cannot just form an image or a kind of an idea about feminism without fulfilling those missing links. So when she says when we dead awaken, she is directly referring to women, that when we dead awaken, when the eyes open and you realize that it's not just you as a woman who has been discriminated against, but when you look into history, there are millions and millions of examples of this kind of pattern of discrimination that has occurred with women. Therefore, arises the need of the female self-definition. So, what is female self-definition? Generally in a patriarchal setup, uh, what a woman is something which is decided by the society itself. Nobody really tells a man or a boy to how to be a man or a boy. But when it comes to women, there are so many things that how to be a good girl, how to be a good sister, how to be a good daughter, or there is a whole load of cultural things that come along with that, and if you follow them, then only you can fit into what society has created, uh, the frame of being a woman. So, Rich clearly defies all that and publishing a new collection every few years. In 2009, Rich released A Human Eye, Essays on Art in Society. Now, again, in these essays, she deals with art in society. Generally, what happens is there are people who will draw a line between art and society, and sometimes it has been quoted very often that literature is the mirror of society, but to what kind of a mirror it is, what exactly does it show? Exactly does it go? Where does art stand in the day-to-day working of society? See, she really brings all those things to surface. She explores the intersection of poetry and the political in essays and reviews. Now, again, re-emphasizing the point that constantly dealing with politics means that uh, poetry is just not a vehicle of expressing your emotions or just particular feelings aroused by a certain kind of experience, but poetry can actively deal with those issues that have a political nature. So when you raise a question against authority, or when you question authority itself and the discrimination which is happening under any kind of name, and that too in poetry, then you cannot just get away from the way they intersect with each other. So this San Francisco Gate, the contributor to Michael Roth, noted that in the book, Rich continues to refuse to separate the artistic from the political, and she articulates in powerful ways how a truly radical political agenda can draw upon an aesthetic vision. Here is another thing. Rich is adamant, or is firm on the fact that you cannot divide, or you cannot take politics away from arts or aesthetics. When we are talking about arts or aesthetics, or when we are creating any form of art, whether it be poetry, painting, sculpture, anything, it has to do, in some way or the other, it has to do with what is political also. See, the kind of range Rich provides in a poetry. It's overtly political, feminist, this edge is there throughout the decades since the Vietnam War and the social activism of the 1960s and 70s. In collections like Your Native Land, Your Life, published in 1986, Times Power, Poems 1985-1988, published in 88, An Atlas of the Difficult World, Poems 1988 to 91, Rich begins to address the Jewish heritage that she was forced to hide during her early life. Throughout all three books, Rich uses personal experience, first person narratives, and rich and varied language. That too, this Jewish heritage, you may understand that what happened during the Holocaust, that all this whole way of the Jewish life, or those people who survived the Holocaust, they were really afraid to come out with that kind of heritage which they had valued so much. But Rich, she takes a step ahead and she speaks of her experience and the kind of Jewish heritage that she had carried. Throughout all three books, Rich uses personal experience, first person narratives, and rich and varied language. Rich's later poetry engages the personal and political in ambitious ways. Though Midnight Salvage Poems 1995-1998 is a quieter collection that focused on the quest for personal happiness. According to Raphael Camp, who reviewed the volume for The Progressive, it also circles the problem of defining happiness in an American society that continues to exploit its most defenseless citizens, and in the face of a larger world where contempt for human rights leads to nightmare. So you may see towards the end of her career, you may say that she's seeking some kind of happiness. Uh, uh, it is not as if, she was earlier, she might not have been happy, but in this sole desire of happiness also, she proposes that how can an individual be happy where the citizens are defenseless and there is the larger world, and you see that that world has a contempt for basic human rights, basic human things. So, as a poet, she has foregrounded all these issues that are so crucial for humanity, not just women, but humanity in general.